The bakery, yeah. The bakery was great. Oh my God. Everybody had a big smile on their face. And I said, nobody came here for the ribbon cutting. It was really, I had a cinnamon roll. I was here. I just myself to that letter. I signed it in the spring.
Oh, okay. So you can go to the niece?
I'll ask him. I asked him to have him go out today.
I sent that on Wednesday, which was December 20th.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You can think about it.
This Thursday.
Well, put the pen on me.
At the Glassberry.
Do it.
Well, I don't know what really.
I did it for 14.
Still, can you send the check?
Appointment process for vacancies.
I'm sorry. But I emailed it to you. Oh, okay. I just say, why are you searching for it? I emailed it to you.
When you click on it, and you pull up and it says the right neighborhood.
That's my freaking chickens, okay? He's getting emailed to you.
It gets signed.
Okay, cool.
I would still.
Okay, tomorrow.
We had to change to a different server. Since then, they're good to go. We jacked up and we switched to plus access to everything.
I guess I'm in the right seat. This roll's not confusing.
But
I remember missing that, man.
and almost as many as Gary has.
I have an extension. I came here sick as shit. You know it.
I wouldn't get agreed.
Well, I lost my voice.
We're in the lower. I'm already having to borrow money to pay.
We just can't get this.
That's one way to do it.
Yes.
But I got all three of my kids plus their families coming, so can't do that.
Every year we keep agreeing to
We try to get
do less than that.
the gifts under $50.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah, I know. Oh yeah, of course. Oh well, we didn't have that much.
Because this way it doesn't get listed on the website. It has people's names and addresses.
I don't know what they're going
I only use it in my
I just wanted to give you a heads up on
There's three of them. I just kind of two of them. You pass social.
Okay.
So here it didn't go very well. Yeah.
Have you talked to them yet? Reactions mostly from Chris.
He said I slept
That's what? It's actually just more like, that's it, form, not substance. I'll try.
Oh, I'm trying to help her help us.
Oh, sure.
I don't want to take it.
Well, I hope he does.
Yeah, that seems to be.
I'll get a steak.
Yes, Ms. Bunting.
So here's your.
How are you?
Okay, good. And here's your events.
I kept looking at my seat. I kept looking.
So we'll be bored to say anything you want.
It always sounds like a wedding.
I think I could.
No comment.
Couldn't I do that?
You could, absolutely, and I would run right up there.
I think I will do this. So be prepared.
I took a couple of words.
Oh, I already got my
Yeah, I did too. I took them.
Oh, okay.
She's the chair.
Yeah.
Gave them away.
She said she'd have it for the next day. So brief little things that I can say at the meeting. No,
she's not.
When everything
She's not.
starts the meeting is made public.
Changing of the guard.
No. This charter review.
Everything's going good.
No, I just wondered what you're thinking is. If you're going to throw it over.
Yeah, that's what I was talking with Aaron about.
Next year.
Yeah, early next year. We move this to a vote next year. It'll have to be a special election. So it could be April. It could be
And Cindy and Suzanne and I had a chat
and we
with
not do it.
Mario Trimble earlier this week. Yeah, and we're working on some things for him for the disclosures that have to be in there.
November.
Okay.
I think so too.
More time.
And of course, the
Mr. Brevetto,
local big issue is peak internet.
just gotta put more gravy on it.
They're right on the table for you guys. Jessica put them right there. It's amazing.
Oh, no. I would say
If it's got some deer in it or something like that, then it's soft. It's got red wine?
Yeah.
Pretty good crap with it. Yeah, we had a good one.
Well, yeah, and I was just thinking of a couple of things.
So if he's not here, I'm just going to.
Sometimes if you scratch the valid, try to screw Oh yeah, I do the
Yeah, like 100 minutes.
The odds are the same.
You're thinking of
40 million.
Okay, ready.
Well, let's add Jessica. Let's get us.
He's on top.
That way I don't do it for real.
Thank you.
But January.
Yeah.
Are you ready, anyway? Let's do this. Call this meeting to order. And before we start with the roll call, I want to welcome, most of you know our new city clerk, Suzanne LeClaire, and we're so glad to have her in this position. And hopefully, if my number is correct, that you have about 876 more before you can retire.
Yes.
So we're very glad to have you.
Thank
Thanks
you. I
for being here.
appreciate
You
that,
bet.
Mayor.
Welcome.
Ready for roll?
I'm ready for roll call.
Mayor Levy?
Here.
Brevetto?
Me? Brevetto, yeah, Brevetto.
Carlson?
Yes.
Harvey?
Here.
Matthews?
Here.
Sawyer? Sawyer's absent. Schaefer?
Here.
If I could just take a moment, I would like to introduce my replacement of the Deputy City Clerk for the City of Woodland Park is Jessica Memmer, and she's in the back. Can you stand up, Jessica, so everyone can see you? Jessica comes to us from Teller County Sheriff's Department, and then prior to that, she worked for the City of Cripple Creek as the Deputy City Clerk. So she has quite a bit of experience, and we're really excited to have her here.
Thanks, Suzanne. Welcome, Jessica. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to the Pledge of Allegiance, and we got a special treat tonight. Mr. Buttery and I were fortunate to spend some time with the Webelow Cub Scout Pack number 20 last week, and had them in here and around City Hall a little bit, showed them around and answered some questions, and there was some indication that they would like to present the colors at a city council meeting. So we're fortunate to have them here this evening, and you're on.
Mayor, he's going to use your microphone.
Terrific.
Color guard attention. Audience, please rise. Scout salute. Those not in uniform, please place your right hand over your heart. Color guard forward march. Color guard halt. Color guard cross the colors. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color guard, post the flag of the United States of America. Color guard, post the flag of the great state of Colorado. Color guard, honor your colors. Color guard, return to ranks. Audience, please be seated.
That was a great job. Thank you very, very much. And Susie Bradley's the leader of the troop, and Susie's with us today. So thank you all for being here. That was great. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to Suzanne and ceremonies. Well, let's see. Ceremonies, presentations, and appointments.
Thank you, Mayor Levy. This evening, we will be appointing to our Planning Commission. There are 3 current openings in our Planning Commission. We've received 4 applications. The 4 applicants that applied were Jeff Watson, Tom Rollinger, Daniel Vogel, and Gerald Penland. And I believe Gerald is not here tonight? Okay, so we have, council, we have 3 of the applicants here. You have their attendance reports, and you have their applications with you. And so we can call them up to the podium and interview them and do what you'd like.
Let's do that. Shall we start with Daniel?
Aren't we going to have the others be recused while each one speaks? That's what we've done in the past.
That certainly is your call to do that. If you'd like, we can ask the others to wait in the planning conference room.
That's what I always felt like that was more appropriate. That way, whether you're first or last speaking, you don't have an advantage or a disadvantage depending on how you look at it.
Okay.
I think that's a good.
It's
a
up to
good
the rest of the
suggestion.
council as well, but I think that would be.
Does everyone agree with that?
Brian, thank you.
Take a moment.
Take a moment. Okay, question for Danny?
Said everything. Go ahead, John.
Dan, how long have you been on the planning commission?
I believe it's been, is it 3 years already? 2 years, 3 years. Yeah, 3 years.
Okay,
Time flies.
it does. Your attendance record?
I think it's been pretty good. I don't recall offhand how many meetings I've missed.
I have that in front of me, Councilmember. It is, the Planning Commission had 16 meetings last year, and he's been here in attendance at 9 of them.
Do you see that absentee rate continuing if you are reelected to your position?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it sometimes is hit or miss, but it is important to be there. So.
Okay. Do you have any extenuating circumstances you want to share it with us, or it's just a question of business and kids and all that?
It's a question of business and kids. I mean, Thursday nights, I mean, we have, there are different things, school plays and things like that tend to fall on Thursday nights. I have 2 kids in middle school and high school, and they're pretty active, and so that's the main one. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ken.
I would just like to ask, from your previous involvement, what was your motivation to think, gosh, I think I'll get on planning commission in Woodland Park? What motivated you to do that and why?
This is a great town. I'm a general contractor, and we base our business here. And being involved in the community has been something that I feel is real important to be, on point with what's going on, and to be part of that base decision-making process and making recommendations that are appropriate that, to affect the city growth. I mean, there are things that are happening with our town with growth, and the different things that I felt that I could be a good contributor to the decision-making to you all. So.
Do you think your background in construction is an asset to that position?
I do, because I see what's happening, on the streets, so to speak. I see the projects that are going on, the growth. It's, the finger on the pulse, so to speak.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What has been your most challenging experience on the planning council?
Probably being here. No, I'm kidding. I think some of it, the work sessions are challenging. I mean, there are things that, that we've come up with to make recommendations that really have, they challenge all of us. I mean, there are things, because we know how important it is. I mean, there are items that really, I think I feel like if we make a mistake on that, or we do something that, as a group that it won't help, So it's one of those things. I think that it's just a challenge to come up with the right decisions on, and it really has to do with the growth, the water, the things that we're doing as a community and as a city. So.
One of the main issues that will come before the Planning Commission this next year is the revisions to the comprehensive plan. Mm-hmm. And what do you see as the most urgent issue? And 2, the plan as it is doesn't really have a lot of actionable things. What is your top actionable item that you would like to see put in the comprehensive plan?
I think going back to growth, but also just housing, I think, is a big one. I mean, I think that there's, we have the number of lots that are available out there that are buildable, that are affordable. I think that one of our big issues, one of the biggest ones that we have right now is the enough places for people to live, for the people that are the support of the community. Not a lot of retirees here, things like that, folks who live here who have jobs, but it's the folks that are the fast food workers and the people that commute to Woodland Park to work. There are quite a few of them, and I'm not sure if that's actionable, but it's a big issue.
Well, John's trying to take a lot of action on that, so.
John is.
So would you call yourself a supporter of workforce housing then?
If it makes sense, yes. It's definitely a need, because if we have growth, the kind of growth that's projected over the next, say, 10 years, I think that it's important that we have the type of housing that keeps people here, so they're spending money here rather than taking it back to Colorado Springs. So I would support it, yeah.
So you said if it makes sense. What would be your definition of making sense?
If it's cost effective. So there's some hurdles on that one. Cost of land is pretty expensive. Taxes, things like that. They make projects like that difficult. So as an investor, we talk to them quite often. Oh, I'd like to build in Woodland Park. Can we find land? Can we find land in the surrounding area? And it's one of the big issues. Basically the return on investment a lot of times is not there. So how can they be subsidized to make that work? And I think that's what would make sense. But how that happens, I'm not sure.
Well, are you talking about city incentives for builders?
Not necessarily for builders, but for people who are looking to invest in the community, to build workforce housing, things like that. Sure.
Mm-hmm. I disagree with Councilman Carlson that there are not a lot of actionable items in the comprehensive plan. There actually is in each chapter, but the problem is executing those actions. In your year on the Planning Commission, or in this past year, how did you use the comprehensive plan?
Sally used that. They gave it to us, and we basically used that to base decisions on different items. It's kind of like the playbook.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah.
Dan, I got a couple of things kind of following up on what John said. In talking to some people that you've worked with, clearly you're making a great contribution and you have good perspective. People enjoy working with you. If you're an employee of mine and you miss 7 out of 16 meetings, you're gone. How would you address that for the future if you get reelected? We all have kids. We all have other things to do. Planning is one of the more important jobs in our community. And I think you would agree, if you have people working for you and missed half their work time, that they probably would not be still employed. So help me with that.
Well, I'll say this. My kids are my number one priority. So that's going to take precedence over anything. Planning Commission is it's a duty that I have, sure. I would say, I'll try to do better on things, but many of the meetings fell on school event times that I had committed to my kids to be there for. So, it's kind of luck of the draw on that one, but I did ask forgiveness, but I also let people know that I wouldn't be there. So making sure that there were, if they were things that were important to be there, I was always, if it was something that they weren't going to have a quorum, then I would make sure I was there. So.
You understand the concern.
Oh, I do. Yep.
And God bless you for putting your kids number one.
Well, they're going to be part of the community someday, so I think, I want to make sure that I'm a good role model for them and be there for them too. So.
And the second thing is, if we don't see the growth that you plan on seeing relative to affordable or workforce housing, what are we going to do with our policemen and our teachers and our firemen in the next years if we don't have a place where they can live comfortably in the community that they serve?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer. I really don't. But I think that we need to strive to try to find one. As a former teacher, I know what teachers live on, and it's tough when they're commuting from Colorado Springs and still paying, $600 a month for a place to live down there, and their base salary, it's tough with fuel and everything else. Commuting, having to be here early, leaving late. Police officers the same way, and I think it's important that we look for something, we figure out something. And I have some ideas, but it really does come down to what's the bottom line return on investment for people, because that's what tends to drive it. And it's an unfortunate thing, but that's what the market is. That's what holds. So it's a big challenge.
No doubt. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, Dan, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Should we call Mr. Watson or Mr. Watson?
That'd be fine.
Okay.
And Suzanne, how many meetings did,
Let's see, Mr. Watson attended 14 of the 16 meetings.
thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Watson.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. John, would you like to start for us?
Yes, I guess I would. This will be for your second term on the
Yes.
Planning Commission?
Yes,
You are currently vice chair?
yes.
Okay. What do you view as some priorities for the Planning Commission? I know we asked you to list the top 3 in your application, but could you expand maybe on what you included in your application?
Well, I think we've done a good job of scrubbing the zoning code and some other things, but my it's not a pet peeve, but my desire, I guess, of looking in the future to see some more specificity in the planning process. We have a great comprehensive plan, but it tends to the general and tends to be less actionable than, at least in my planning experience, good planning is. So I guess if I were to prioritize things I'd like to see some breakout from that plan to take on particular subjects and then look out in the future and say, okay, here's our housing situation now, but do a 5 to 10 year plan that is more specific in terms of action items to do that could be even considered in terms of funding. Look out to the future. I think we have some issue areas that beg that kind of question. I think, like we've talked a lot about affordable housing, and I think a whole housing issue in Woodland Park needs to, be thought about in the, multi-year vein. Look out 10 years where we're going to be or where we want to be, and what we have to do to get there. I think, looking at some of the other communities around, I think I'd like to see a long-term technology plan that makes this a competitive city for our size, like a lot of the towns in Colorado are doing. And of course, water is always an issue, but those are a couple of the areas that I think are important to look at.
So you're talking about fiber optics and broadband or capacities?
Yeah, or a lot of the towns are integrating their police, their school system, their emergency response, those kinds of things, along with city government, and at least in terms of connectivity. So there's more communication throughout the community. I think that's important. I think the ability, I know we have a website and Facebook and things like that, but getting out and being able to commute broadly throughout the community so that the average citizen knows what's going on in town and has some vested interest in that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, you've answered, I think, part of this, but given you've already had a full term, I guess 2 things. What would you say is the biggest surprise you had in the last term on Planning Commission that you didn't expect? What surprised you that you had to learn from, and what did you learn from that and would like to change in the future? Anything?
Well, not having, I've had some experience in Virginia in similar kinds of organizations, so I wasn't too surprised about what the Planning Commission was doing. There's kind of typical things that I've seen. One of the positive things was, I was really impressed by the comprehensive plan. And I think that was a super job done by the city. And like I said, I think if we take that further, it'll be even further enhanced.
Great.
So I don't know that I would, had any surprises or anything that I'd, like to change.
Just continue work on the comprehensive plan.
Well, comprehensive plan, maybe get more specific in the planning, get more involved in that, being more specific in terms of our recommendations to you, the council.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
He's already answered the question I had for the previous candidate about priorities and the comprehensive plan.
Thanks. Mr. Loretto?
Yeah. Talking about the comprehensive plan, are you aware that Downtown Colorado Inc. did an assessment not too long ago of our town, which had a lot of public input over a period of about 3 to 4 days?
Mm-hmm.
How do you plan on incorporating that into the comprehensive plan?
Well, I don't think we've seen the report yet. It's
been out there.
What?
It's
Well,
on
it
the
hasn't
website.
been. It hasn't come to the Planning Commission to consider.
It's on the website.
But we all of us went to the meetings, and we've talked about it, in our sessions about things that were highlighted in that plan, like communications. One of the shortfalls of the community here in Woodland Park is communications that they identified, and I think that some of the things that I thought about that I just talked about are things that we could do or take on or look into or start planning for.
Jeff, you took the time out of your schedule to attend the Colorado Municipal League conference this summer, and the previous year as well. What did you gain from that experience that you could bring back to the Planning Commission?
Well, I've talked to the Planning Commission a lot about the things that I saw there that impressed me, and again, some of the towns, they're moving ahead the way they communicate with their community, very aggressive in terms of getting the word out to their community about things. I think what we did with the Aquatic Center kind of approaches that somewhat, explaining to the community how things go. So I think that the communities that I saw that were successful in a variety of venues or issues across several issues were communities that had a robust and well thought out communications plan with their communities, using not only social media but town hall meetings and really getting out, and they were able to accomplish a lot of things, particularly things that required the community to pony up some resources. They were very successful in being able to do that, primarily, I think, through their communications, the way they communicated.
Thanks, Jeff. Money well spent.
There you go. Well, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. I don't have any other question. I will say this. In my conversations with those that you work with and in the community, very well respected. Everyone appreciates your hard work, so we very much thank you for that, regardless of the outcome of tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rollinger. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you. Been here before.
Yes, you have, and welcome back.
Thank you.
I'll start.
Good.
Take the heat off John. Tom, we've been talking about the use of the comprehensive plan and the process of updating it. Your time on the commission, how have you used it, and how do you think we can improve it?
Improve the review process or the plan itself? Or?
The plan itself.
Well, as you know, because we were involved in it a number of years ago, it needs a relatively frequent review and updating to reflect changes in the city, changes in times, et cetera. And I think my experience is that process has occurred fairly naturally with a lot of input from the entire community. And it just seems to me, it just seems to evolve into the appropriate document. It isn't magic, but there's just so much input and so much effort. And, folks seem to be pretty interested in it. So I think we end up with an excellent document as we take a look at it periodically.
Mm-hmm. Have you used it extensively while you've been on the commission, the comprehensive plan?
When cases are brought before us, frequently there is a reference to a point or a policy or a guideline that's in the comp plan, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say each and every case that's been brought to us, but yeah, far and away the lion's share of them, there's some mention about the comp plan.
Let's go to Bob. We'll change it up a little bit.
Yeah, and on the same subject, what, as you're going to be reviewing this, or at least the Planning Commission will be reviewing this over the next year, what actionable items do you think are the most important priorities for adding to the comprehensive plan?
Well, I think as I look at the community itself, clearly we have to keep our eye on, all of us have to keep our eye on things like water taps. Water is a finite resource. Roughly 2/3 of the water resources in the state are on the western slope, although the western slope has maybe a quarter or at most a third of the residents of the state. I think multifamily housing, I think is important. There's still, even with Trail Ridge, there's really still a shortfall, and that probably should include some consideration of more affordable rents as opposed to market-based rents. Those are a couple of things that come to mind.
As I understand it, the comprehensive plan is up for about a 5-year review, and I understand that the planning department takes the lead usually in analyzing that plan. Within the last year, we had a very comprehensive look at our town done by Downtown Colorado Inc., where they made an assessment based on public input. There were a range of meetings. I don't know if you've been to any of those meetings.
I have not.
But it was about over three nights, and the whole public was invited, the business community, citizens and everything. And they put together a kind of a recommendations, if you will, which went into their assessment for us to be designated Main Street candidate. How do you plan on incorporating the recommendations and the review that they had in the comprehensive plan review that you will probably be going through here shortly?
Well, for me personally, obviously the first thing to do is to do a thorough reading of what the citizens said.
Do you know where that's available?
I do.
Good.
And I would do that before I proceeded. I think certainly, as Carol knows, having served with me, I'm kind of a research-minded, diligent, somewhat anal, I guess.
I was going to say that, but
person.
In a good way.
It's all right. I surrender. I like to have the facts before I proceed. and I like to be well prepared.
Okay with that.
You've served 2 terms now on the Planning Commission?
Just bumping up against 2, yes.
Okay,
Almost 6 years.
all right.
It's gone by like that.
So you've seen enough and think that there's still enough to be done to keep you engaged, as you have been,
Oh, no
over the
question.
next 3 years, right?
No,
Okay,
absolutely no question. The city's still growing. There's development, as you know, in several areas. And frankly, the city's changed in 6 years for the better.
okay.
And I think, well, I wouldn't be up here if I didn't think, I couldn't be gainfully employed, if you will, for the next 3 years.
Okay. You made a statement, I think, concerning multifamily housing, rental perhaps, ownership. What kinds of incentives might you be willing to make to encourage those types of units to be built?
To a developer or a builder,
To a developer, to the community?
TIF, I guess, is the first thing that comes to mind.
Inside or outside of the current DDA overlay?
Could be either way, in or out.
Okay,
As you know, the DDA is large,
yes. All right,
maybe well beyond its initially conceived boundaries.
and growing,
But it's large, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And it's much larger than Woodlow Station.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just to be equal, how many meetings was? he in?
14.
14 out of 16, okay.
Ken, you have anything?
Nothing more?
Yeah, I think I might add, I don't really know the number, but I would guess my attendance over the nearly 6 years is at about 90%.
Okay.
And Tom also participated in the mayor's run this summer.
Oh, good. I didn't know that, yeah.
I think I walked.
Our question for city staff, are there any term limits on the planning commission? No? Okay.
I also might like to say one thing. Of course, I'm looking forward to serving another 3 years. I think it'll be an important 3 years, and I really enjoy working with planning staff, Sally and Lisa. And I'm just amazed, and I think I said this when I came up here 6 years ago, we are a small city, but we have an unbelievable amount of talent at the city level. And it's always a pleasure. Don't make me work too hard, please.
Thanks very much, Tom.
Mr. Mayor?
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Penland is not here today. Everyone has his resume in front. Should we talk about that?
That's what I was going to suggest. Although he's not here, we've had a chance to read his resume, so we know quite a bit about him. He hasn't been able to answer these specific questions. But one, I think, critical question is, did he have a good reason not to be here tonight?
We're not clear on that.
Yeah.
So he didn't call in to say why he couldn't make it.
I talked with him 2 weeks ago when he was on vacation in Hawaii, and so I don't know why he's not here.
Okay.
So he's still in Hawaii.
Well, yeah, we shouldn't penalize him then for his good judgment to stay in Hawaii.
Good point. Any other questions from council? I'm going to open it up. I know that Mr. DeVoe has asked if he could speak on behalf of anyone. So, John, if you'd like to come forward. And if anyone else would like to speak afterwards, they're certainly welcome.
Keep those guys in there and I can say other things about them. But John DeVoe, Chairman of the Planning Commission. All three of the people that you have before you have contributed in some way, shape, or form to the success of what we've done. Mr. Watson, who's gone to CML and came back and gave us reports on what he's been doing. He's done that now for, I think, 2 or 3 years. Mr. Rollinger comes from a background in business and leadership, and he's kind of like the George Parkhurst of the Planning Commission. Every I is dotted and every T is crossed, and he does a very good job of that. So I always have him check the minutes, but he lends a lot. I understand what you're saying about Mr. Vogel and the attendance, but he's always been there for the important ones, and his background is very, very invaluable. And for tonight, when you're deciding this, he's here. And I think that's an important thing. These guys, we've got a good group. We work well together. The comprehensive plan for the review this year, if you give us what the budget is, we can work on that. And I don't think that's quite there yet, but you're still working on that. Okay. Remember, and you've asked all those folks questions about that. We spent, 4 work sessions? At least 4 work sessions going on every line item in the comp plan. Every item, and is it on schedule? Is it ahead? Discussion. Then when we got through with all that, we went back again and prioritized a number of units where we wanted to do, what we want to pursue this year. So we've spent a lot of time on that. But again, our charge is not only that, but it's all the cases that come before us that we send on you folks, because you're the ultimate decision on that, as the way it should be. But we've had a pretty good track record of not sending you something that we haven't thought out very well. But I just want to get up here and come up here and say, we've got three fellows that come, and then Mr. Vogel, I can appreciate him with the children. I've turned down a couple jobs over my years in career because I would be home with my family. So I understand that. And thank you.
Thanks, John. And anybody else? Okay.
I think you had a question. I did
Oh, I'm
have
sorry.
one there. I'll take into what you said. Yeah, if I had, normally you have to book a vacation well in advance, and Mr. Penland may not have known that tonight, in the middle of his vacation, we were going to handle this subject. So I won't necessarily hold that against him. So that said, I'm going to.
Well,
I always believe in fresh blood too on your group, so I'll probably go for it.
I think it would be ironic if we didn't vote in Mr. Vogel because he missed 7 out of 16 meetings and voted for somebody that's not here today. That said, that certainly speaks to his track record, and in my opinion, that's a tough one for me to overcome.
Yeah. But his the write-up is very professional. I mean, he's done a lot of planning. So.
Any other questions?
Let me make a comment. I've attended 4 or 5 planning commission meetings, particularly back in the accessory dwelling unit days, and very impressed with the group. And it was not a unanimous decision out of the planning commission, but yeah, good work.
And I've worked with Tom and Jeff over the years, particularly Tom, when we put together the most recent version of the comprehensive plan. I don't know Mr. Vogel, but I do know Tom and Jeff, and they've been great planning commissions, and I think will be a great addition to continue their terms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say the importance of the Planning Commission to this group is very, very high. I spent 10 years on Planning Commission and a lot of other issues, including Walmart, and the importance and the work that they do really makes our job a little bit easier because they get through a lot of the technical things. I mean, that's shared with us too, but they put a lot of work in ahead that a lot of the public doesn't see before it comes to us. So these are very important positions, and we greatly appreciate their hard work.
And they make our jobs a lot easier, in my view. Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else? Not, then we should move to vote.
So it's the council's choice as to whether or not they would like to vote by paper ballot or just out loud.
I would recommend paper since there's 4 for 3 positions.
Is everybody good with that?
So we're voting on 3.
Correct.
All right.
So I'll announce the council members' name and their votes, and Suzanne will keep track of that and then tally the numbers at the end. In the event of a tie, we'll discuss how we'll handle that. Levy votes for Watson, Rollinger, and Penland. Harvey votes for Rollinger, Watson, and Penland. Brevetto votes for Watson, Rollinger, and Penland. Carlson votes for Watson, Rollinger, and Penland. Matthews votes for Watson, Vogel, and Rollinger. And Schaefer votes for Watson, Rollinger, and Vogel. So we'll give Suzanne a couple of seconds to tally across.
Okay, so Rollinger has 6 votes, Watson has 6 votes, Vogel has 2 votes, and Penland has 4 votes. So Rollinger, Watson, and Penland. Now,
And Suzanne is prepared to issue their oaths this evening.
Yes. So if Mr. Rollinger and Mr. Watson will join me up at the podium. Sworn in. We'll have you guys face this way so you get your face in the picture. Okay, so raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Tom Rollinger,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the State of Colorado,
and of the State of Colorado,
the Charter and ordinances
the Charter and ordinances
of the City of Woodland Park,
of the City of Woodland Park,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the Office of Planning Commissioner
the duties of the Office of Planning Commissioner
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you and
Thank you.
congratulations.
Let's have you sign your oaths. So here's yours, Tom. I need you to sign 2 places, right here and right here. And Jeff, the same with you.
One of them's mine?
Yes, you can keep one.
Okay, do I have to sign it?
Yeah, sign
I should know I've done that.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jeff? Thank you, and we'll get Mr. Penland sworn in at a later date.
Thanks very much, Suzanne. Congratulations, Mr. Rollinger. Congratulations, Mr. Watson. Appreciate it. Mr. Vogel, for myself, you and I have the same priorities. I really respect the fact that your children and your family are number one in your life. I also know that you did a tremendous job while you were on planning and while you were at the meeting. So if there's any thought in the future of coming back, we would certainly welcome that. So thank you for your time and thank you for your commitment. We really appreciate it. Thanks for your service. Okay, we will move forward. Number 5, additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda. Suzanne?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Levy. We do have one deletion to the agenda, and that is item 6C. It's a financial advisory agreement, which we will just put off until the January 15th council meeting. The attorney, Aaron Smith, will prepare a staff report, and we'll get to that at the next meeting. Thank you.
Is that our next scheduled meeting?
We'll have that discussion towards the end of the meeting tonight.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to the consent calendar. So, Suzanne?
Okay, this evening on the consent calendar, we have the minutes of the November 20th council meeting, and we have a contract between the city and URS, and that information has been given to you in staff report. And then that's it.
Do you have a motion?
I have a question.
Question?
Yeah, the 79,859 figure, that includes both the state contribution and our share. So is that the cost shared amount?
Correct.
Okay. Total amount.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
With deletion.
With the deletion.
With the deletion.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Okay. Brivetto?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Harvey?
Yes.
Levy?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Move on to unfinished business, 7A, and Mr. Buttery and Mr. Dingwell.
Mr. Mayor, we're going to shuffle up the agenda just a bit because the two items on unfinished business do have to do with the budget, and the vast majority of the remaining part of the meeting after the 3 public hearings have to do with the budget. It just makes sense to have all those discussions at the same time, and so I'm going to propose that we move directly to agenda items 9A, B, and C, the public hearings, so we can allow those customers to be serviced, and then we'll have our discussions on the budget stuff throughout the rest of the meeting.
Sounds good to me, council. All
Thank you.
good? All right. And Suzanne, let's move on to public hearings and 9A.
Thank you, Mayor Levy. First on the agenda, we have this evening 2 transfer of liquor licenses. The first one is for a transfer of ownership for an off-premise beer license for the Diamond Shamrock that we all know as Valero Diamond Shamrock on 520 Highway 24 West. This company, Quickway Retail Associates, has come in and bought almost all of them throughout the Denver and Colorado Springs area, and so we just are looking for permission to switch the transfer of license to them. They are in good standing with us. They've done everything they needed to do. Their members of the LTD are listed on your staff report for you, and the findings are that we would ask the council to approve this transfer.
Questions, council? I've got one, and maybe someone else could speak to this on, maybe Sally. Do you have any plans for changing anything, doing anything different? Haven't seen anything. And when do they intend on taking over?
They actually closed the business. Their business closed on December 1st, and I have issued them a temporary liquor license pending tonight's hearing, and then we'll get the final from the state. So there'll be no lapse in service. They'll continue with the temporary that's been issued.
Are they selling only beer there?
Yes, and it's off premise.
It's off premise. So I can't go drink there?
No, cannot.
Just check.
If you drink.
Okay, I drank. Any other questions? Call for motion.
Motion to approve as stated, transfer of license.
Second.
Okay, we take that to a vote. Carlson?
Yes.
Harvey?
Yes.
Levy?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Rivetto?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, 9B, is another transfer of a liquor license, but I'm proud to say tonight the new owners are in the audience. So this is for the Historic Ute Inn. I know we did this about 6 weeks ago. They have a new owner now, and the new owner is Mr. Elijah Murphy and his daughter Crystal Cody, and they are sitting over there and willing to come up to the podium and tell you a little bit about what their plans are for their business upon approval. And this is just a transfer of liquor license. They have done everything they needed to do, and the staff would like this to be approved.
Great. Would you like to come up? We'd love to hear from you. If you'll just give us your name and your address. And
my name is Elijah Murphy. This is my stepdaughter, Crystal Cote. Bobby sitting over there will be the resident manager. Mr. Vilgiotti's business took him to other places, and with his LED, he has 2 other businesses he's heavily involved in, which are far more lucrative than a bar and restaurant. And bars and restaurants are the most difficult, or one of the most difficult businesses in business. So my wife has bartended there for 13 years. Crystal has bartended there for 10. I've hung around for 5. And it's our intention to make it a great place for people to meet. Mr. Levy, you're more than welcome to come drink there. We're on premises. And we also have some pretty good food. It's not quite as fine a dining as yours, but it's up there. And I'm very picky about food items. So Mr. Vilgiotti, when he whipped out a placard and talked about listing it with a company that looks for rich out-of-staters to purchase businesses, I became immediately concerned and bent a knee and asked where the money was going to come from, and it appeared. So I paid Mr. Vilgiotti off, and because I was already a partner with him, but a silent one, and we are going forward as a family business to create jobs in the community, create tax revenues to help you guys meet the, what do you call it, which plan?
Aquatic
Comprehensive
Center.
plan, that's it. Other than that, we're just, Mr. Mueller, Mike Mueller is a very good friend of mine. He's there to help us and go forward. I have actually quieted that place down over the 5 years that I hung out there. I really don't tolerate a lot of garbage. I believe in integrity and in people doing the right thing when nobody's looking. So, if you have any questions for me, or one other thing, she's going to be graduating with her business degree, so I figured she would be we plan on passing this on to the kids and making it a long-term arrangement.
Are you
because
going
we
to
wanted to retire next year.
Are you going to keep the chili cheeseburgers on the menu?
Yes, ma'am.
Good to go.
That'll be there. We're keeping the good stuff. Like I said, I'm really picky about food. There might be a couple items that you won't find on there anymore, but we're going to make it a good place to be.
That's one vote then. Question about the source of the name, Never Ending. Who came up with that and why?
Okay, actually it came from the Never Ending Story, The Luck Dragon. We were kicking around names, and a nickname was brought up that comes from that, somebody was called Hoggle in the family once upon a day, and they brought that up. Why don't we just call it Hoggle Inc.? I'm like, okay, let's take it from the Never Ending Story then. And small business owners, I was a soldier for 20 years, 5 months, and 24 days. Not that I was keeping track, but they kind of put that on a piece of paper for me. And I went on deployments, and I would have an end date, or generally, sometimes the plane wouldn't show up, and we'd have to walk a little ways to get back, but we always had an end date. With small business owners, you don't have an end date. You don't have an end in sight of the business. It is, unless you're looking to flip houses or somebody like that, but we're not that way. And we look at it as a long-term investment in the community for our family and to teach our kids about business, because I always have ground on them about getting a good education, and she managed to go forward and do that, and to create a business or buy a business and create jobs for the community. That's the true spirit of community. instead of just getting a good education, growing up, and getting a good job.
Got another one. How do you like those stainless steel tables you have in the former Ute Inn?
Sir, I might have gone with a little bit of wood on that, but they're very beautiful, and a local artist did them, and they clean up really nice.
Yes. Those local artists are my daughter and her husband.
Cool.
You answered right.
You just got another vote.
That's right. That's two. That's two votes.
Okay. They are staying. I'm not getting rid of them. Okay.
Yep. So I guess the question is exactly how much wood are you going to be putting on those tables?
Not on the. I'm not gonna. I've got some other plans for other parts of the bar, but I have to kind of keep with the floor plan we have. So I'm not going to be doing a lot of changes there.
Well, I had conversations with Tony, and what you all are doing at the Ute Inn is commendable. You've certainly cleaned it up. It's much more family oriented now, and certainly I know that food is a high priority for you. And I congratulate you for everything that you're doing. I think you're doing a great job. Really good. And if you want to buy another family business, let me know. You never know.
Today the Ute, tomorrow the world. Not a
There you
problem.
go.
Never ending.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, we'll call for a motion.
I move to approve application for the transfer of the liquor license from, who was it? The Tavern, to the Never Ending Incorporated. Ute Pass.
Second.
Who wants to take that second?
You got it?
Okay. I'll call for the vote. Harvey?
Yes.
Levy?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Brevetto?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to item 9C. Before we do that, I have a statement to read. Council members use electronic devices to access the materials relevant to the public hearing before us. Be assured that it is the common practice of this city council that these devices are not being used for texting, emailing, or other communications during public hearings. Thank you. Okay, Lisa, welcome. You're on.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. Tonight we have a request for conditional use, and this is for Radiant Church located at 201 North Boundary Street. And the applicant, Mr. Patrick Tanton, is here this evening. He is the representative for the church, the project lead of sorts. And then we have next to him Patrick Morgan. He is the architect for this project. So if you have any questions following my presentation, they are here to answer those questions as well. And this request is to utilize the existing and continue to utilize as a place of worship the existing just over 2,000 square feet worship structure on Lot 7A, Block 5 of Foster's Addition, as well as to place an additional modular type youth accessory structure on over where the existing single-family home is on that lot. That single-family home will be demolished. And this relates to our place in our table of permitted uses code, section K and number 4, which relates to churches, synagogues, and using them as a place of worship, as well as any residential uses that are, or accessory uses that are also included for the use of worship. And in the community commercial zone, as is this lot, is zoned community commercial, that is does require a conditional use permit. So that's why we're here. This next slide here shows you the existing zoning, and you'll notice the community commercial is noted as the fuchsia color on this slide, and to the north and the south we have community commercial surrounding this particular site, which is circled in blue for you. We also have some neighborhood commercial to the northwest, as well as some central business district to the west and southwest. And then, of course, Off across Rampart Range Road to the east, we have the public semi-public, which is where our high school and Gateway Elementary are located. And I've placed 2 pictures of the existing structures on this slide and then presented arrows so that you could get a feel for where those existing structures are located. This is that just over 2,000 square foot worship structure that has been majority over the last 50 years used as a place of worship. This structure, as far as back as we can tell, in accordance with the Teller County Assessor's database, dates all the way back to 1965 as being built. And they also had the single-family residential structure that's to the northwest of this lot listed as being built in 1965. But then during Planning Commission, we received a visit from some offspring of the person that built this structure, who informed us that this was actually built in 1930. So both of these structures have been existed on this lot before inception of our zoning ordinance. And so we consider both of these structures legal non-conforming. And in accordance with that guidance, as long as the use continues, doesn't discontinue for more than 2 years, you can continue to use it as it existed prior to your zoning ordinance coming into place. And also, if they were to alter or remove a structure, then that would kick in the need for a conditional use permit. So now that we're talking about removing the existing single-family residential home to the northwest corner of this lot, that's what's going to trigger the need for the conditional use permit for place of worship for both of these structures. And also want to let you know that this was zoned until 1996, when we rezoned, was zoned R1. So perhaps that is why we had a residential structure here. And then also want to just point out that in June, we did receive an application and approve the application to remove the lot lines between what was lots 7, 8, and 9. And so now this became 7A. This is an aerial view of this site, again, but circled in red. And you'll notice one of the things I want to point out to you with this Google picture is you'll see that the traffic coming off of the ingress and egress in between these two structures is incoming as well as outgoing on this one pathway. I just want to note that in this picture because you'll see how they changed that as I show you the site plan and a little bit later. But also to point out to you that to the west we have North Boundary Street. We do have an alley which serves as a public right-of-way in between KK and Tree Service, as well as between where the existing residential home sits. And we have several businesses that surround this site. We have to the east, we have Carter Realty. These are more of mini warehouses, storages. And then we have several businesses to the south. Directly to the south, we have CenturyLink. This is the site plan, and I did give you hard copies, or I did send a PDF with this attached, so you should have been able to zoom in and see it a little better. There's a lot of detail on here, so I want to kind of go over it with you. This top structure, the outline in bold here, as well as the cross-hatched area in it, is the area of the single-family home that will be removed, demolished. And then the gray area represents where the new approximate 1440 square foot modular type accessory structure will be placed. They will be removing the basement and foundation that's under this portion here that's white, but they will leave the foundation under this area here for that modular structure to use as storage. And then, as I mentioned just before, I want to go to this before you get it out of your mind. The way that traffic will work in this new site plan is that they will come in through that same ingress-egress, but instead of coming out this way, they will continue to go to the east, and then they will go north, and then to the north of that structure, that new modular structure, they will exit. That will be the way that they will leave. So it will be more of a one-way flow for traffic. There is a ramp as well as a stairwell here, as well as a covered porch area, entry area into this new structure. And it's 5 feet wood deck. And there's also an ADA handicap van accessible parking space right out here in front of that structure as well as some additional parking through here, and then also to the east of that those two structures. That will be re-asphalted because right now it's rather worn and torn up. And then also want to point out there is a lot of existing landscaping. They've done a lot of work, particularly surrounding that existing worship structure with many boulders and rocks and natural mountain-looking type of landscaping. They'll be doing some additional landscaping off to the southwest corner here off of the new proposed structure, as well as a monument-style sign right off to the west of that structure. And then also there is existing sidewalk right now that will continue to be utilized, but they will ensure that they build out the sidewalk connecting between those two structures within that property boundary. And there is snow storage as well that is included down here, kind of the honeycomb looking detail, and a detention area that has been reviewed and approved, though we are waiting more detail and will continue to look at that in more depth with the zoning development permit for the actual commercial placement of that structure, but has been approved as far as placement for that detention area. This is a rendering and an elevation. This is if you were looking north, so it's the south elevation. And what you'll notice here is that covered entry and deck and ramp as well that I pointed out on the site plan a little bit earlier. They'll be doing some stone work, some veneer stone work to make it blend and also match, be complementary to the main structure. And want to point out that the tallest point, 15 feet, 8.5 inches. So that's well within the height maximum for the community commercial zone, which is 35 feet in height. Now, as I've said in the past, when we review a conditional use permit, we review it to 11 criteria, and we analyze that, and that's what I'm going to go over. I'll go over each one, and then just give you some details on how we analyzed it to each criteria. And the first one here is that the use demonstrates a direct need to be located in this particular location. Again, this has existed for 50 years. What they're really doing here is they're improving that use by adding a youth accessory structure that can be used for their current existing church members as well as appealing to new ones. And both of these existing structures, again, preceding zoning ordinance. So the use has been there for quite a while. The neighbors are used to it. Comprehensive plan designates this as a mixed-use area, meaning both residential and commercial are looked to in the future to go into this area. And also want to note that it fits well in between the two intents of the community commercial zone, which is for commercial uses that have more moderate impacts. There are moderate impacts with the church, such as traffic and noise, and also fits well with the central business district, which is to the west of that area that I showed you on the zoning map, in that there is pedestrian and motoring traffic that goes to a church. So it's kind of a nice transition between those. They've also mitigated all of the impacts, from landscape to snow storage to detention area and parking lot upgrades that they needed to. Criteria number 2 is that this use will not endanger the public health and welfare. Again, we review all of our zoning and development permits and building permits, review this to IBC, International Building Code, which relies heavily on making sure that it meets safety standards, building safety standards, and fire regulations are met. Additionally, with the demolition of the existing single-family home. We, as part of our zoning demolition permit, take it further in that we ask them to provide us certification for the hazardous abatement or potential asbestos through the state. As part of that, they have to provide that with their zoning development permit. Criteria number 3 talks to the use not substantially injuring the value of vicinity properties. Again, they're used to this. It's in a good transition point between the two types, community commercial, central business district. Also between the fact that we do, even though to the west we have some zoning for central business district and neighborhood commercial, most of the houses in that area are residential homes. So we do have some residential to the west, and a church provides a nice transition between that and businesses, which are to the north, east, and south of this area. They did take it a bit further, and they did ask for a professional opinion. They consulted Ms. Connie Sims of Keller Williams, and she provided us a vicinity evaluation via a letter that's attached to your packet as well. One of the things that she said is the improvements that the church has already completed, as well as the planned future improvements, will positively impact the surrounding properties. And we did follow the public notification process and procedures. We haven't received any feedback other than the gentleman that just informed us that that residential structure was built in 1930. And as far as criteria number 4, that it shall be in harmony with the area in which it's located, again, fitting nicely into the concept of horizontal mixed use between residential type structures and businesses, and fitting to the intent of both community commercial and central business district. Criteria number 5, that this shall conform to all city plans, that including growth management, transportation, utilities, capital improvements. Again, future comprehensive map shows this to fit mixed use, and it supports the comprehensive plan in that it's promoting community well-being, education, health, and recreation, and it provides yet another good opportunity for our youth for productive learning and recreation. And also, one major thing for us and the planning staff is that it will, after undergoing the CUP process and zoning permits, meet all the land use criteria and regulations finally as part of these processes. In addition to that, we do send out our use permits for review by all of the agencies. We did get some feedback from IREA that they do have some overhead facilities at the southwest corner and all around the perimeter of this particular lot, and they are requesting 10-foot utility easements to the north, east, and south property lines. In addition to that, our city engineer has identified that this drainage ditch to the east of that lot is not properly, has not been recorded because it is so preceded zoning ordinance again, and the necessity to do that. So as a condition, they have agreed that they will record easements via an ordinance, and that will be done before it is in operation and given its CO. Let's see here. Criteria number 6 talks about how the use shall conform to all city regulations such as zoning, subdivision, utilities, and construction. Again, we did a site review of the site plans, elevations, and renderings, and find that they all meet relevant code. Again, it'll also meet IBC and fire regulations, and our Pikes Peak Regional Building Department has provided our applicant with all of the materials and necessity for plans that they will need to provide for the demolition of the existing structure as well. And so all the agencies have approved of the CUP site plan review so far. Criteria number 7 talks about the use accommodating on-site and off-site traffic being generated. There was a trip generation letter that was included with this project, and it did state that it projected the use to generate an additional 3 vehicle trips on an average weekday. City engineer also reviewed this and approved it. And again, they'll be doing the driveway and also improving the asphalt, curb, and gutters, as well as striping for pedestrian walkway connection to either structure. Also, in calculating those parking spaces, we did find that it would meet the number of parking spaces required for this use. Semi-public uses, churches, Sunday schools, 1 parking space for every 5 seats. And this has a total of 23 that are provided. 3 of those spaces are, in the winter months, might be utilized for snow storage, but if you subtract those and compare that to the 18 required, they are still meeting and exceeding that requirement. Criteria number 8 talks about how the use will have appropriate regard to topography and environmentally significant features. Relatively flat land, and other than the drainage swale to the east, no topographical challenges. The applicant proposed detention area has been approved by city engineer, but details forthcoming with the ZDP. Criteria number 9, that adequate water supply, solid waste disposal, air protection methods, and water drainage are considered. It's served with both city water and sewer. A water meter pit will be abandoned, and the water meter will need to be relocated into the building. The applicant is aware of that, and they must provide a final fixture unit count. And the detention area that's located directly to the south, again, will be providing more details with that. The snow storage that is directly to the south of that is a good location and approved by the city engineer. Criteria number 10 is that the use shall be designed, constructed, and maintained to not increase public danger. Covered that already, again, meeting IBC and fire regulations. Criteria number 11, that the use may be required to provide architectural design schemes and also required amenities such as, but not limited to, fencing, landscaping, buffer areas, and other aesthetic enhancement measures. And they are doing complementary exterior to the main worship structure. I showed you that stone veneer accents, as well as they'll be painting it to complement the main structure. And the landscaping does meet the 25% requirement, as well as the snow storage meeting the 10% requirement. Asphalt shingles will match the main worship structure, and there will be wall-mounted light fixtures to be full cutoff. On November 13th, Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval for this. Approval of a CUP for a place of worship and the addition of a 1440 square feet religious youth accessory building in the Community Commercial Zoning District located at 201 North Boundary Street and legally described as Lot 7A, Block 5, Foster's addition to Manitou Park, El Paso County, Colorado, now Woodland Park, Colorado, County of Teller. This permit is subject to the following conditions. Number 1, prior to issuance of a zoning development permit, the applicant shall submit a comprehensive fixture unit count and show service lines and separation measurements on the site plan. Prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the use of the property for a place of worship and the addition of a 1440 square foot religious youth accessory building, final lighting must be pre-approved by staff prior to installation and be full cutoff dark sky to reduce potential glare to residents in accordance with the section 1833080F of the code. And the applicant must establish utility easements along the north and the south property lines, as well as a utility and drainage easement along the east property line. These easements shall not exceed 10 feet and will be adjusted along the southwest corner of the existing worship structure that is currently placed 7'6" from the southern property line. This easement shall be accomplished through a separate easement ordinance and meet both city and IREA requirements. And lastly, final signage for a new low-profile, 6 foot tall or less monument-style sign must be approved and reviewed as a separate permanent sign ZDP by staff. The sign electric message display overlay district does not include this site. So we're recommending approval. And this last slide here is just an elevation showing the east side of that structure. Do you have any questions for me? Yes.
Lisa, what is the difference between a youth accessory building and a school?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference?
I think it's just the terminology to let you know that it's going to predominantly be used for youth at this church.
For worship.
So it's just for more title purposes, but it is an accessory structure to the main worship.
So it's not they're not establishing a parochial school.
No.
There. Okay.
Not at all. Good question.
Okay.
What's the capacity of the sanctuary in this new building?
Okay, in this particular, the new modular type structure, it's going to be less than 50.
Okay. And so the parking spaces you said were 18 satisfy the requirement for using some
Right.
relocations for snow storage?
Right. We're actually, because that structure, the youth accessory structure, is mostly youth that aren't driving, we're not including them. The adult members, there will be 4 adult members that will be supervising the children in that structure, and they'll be coming over from the church. So we've just figured the parking off of the main structure.
Okay.
And yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Lisa. Patrick, would you like to come up first? Patrick 10. I'm sorry. We have 2 Patricks. Welcome. If you'll just give us your name and address.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Patrick Tanton, and I'm the executive pastor at Radiant Church in Colorado Springs. So my address is a Colorado Springs address. The central campus for our church is 4020 Maysland Road, Colorado Springs, Colorado, 80909. So that is right off of Academy and Maysland, right across from Palmer Park, basically.
Questions? I've got one to start.
Sure.
Give me an idea about the recreational opportunities for the kids in the new building.
The building itself is primarily for elementary students, so it's we probably wouldn't call it youth. That would be our category for more teenagers. The recreational opportunities would be songs, crafts, those kinds of things during the service that would be next door. So during our worship service for adults, the elementary school students would be next door doing their own songs and their own services and stuff.
Thank you.
Usage during the week, what do you think the occupancy of the building would be, and more importantly, the parking lot?
The only thing that we anticipate in the future is to use it on Wednesday nights, and currently right now we do not have any kind of Wednesday night activity on that campus, and so it'd be very minimal.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Anybody else? No other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
I'm glad to see the lot get cleaned up.
Oh, my gosh. And Mr. Morgan?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Patrick Morgan, and I've been the architect on the project for them to date. My address is 5295 Copper Drive in Colorado Springs.
Thanks for being here. Any questions for Mr. Morgan?
I'm curious if you've encountered any issues with the building you're going to tear down, like hazardous materials, asbestos, et cetera.
We did have that evaluated. A contractor's been retained by the church. They've already established there were hazardous materials that's already been abated. We are waiting for certification from the state that they've accepted the building or whatever that certification says.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I wasn't quite sure from Lisa's presentation whether both buildings would have similar architectural exterior enhancements, or is it just the new building?
We're not proposing any modifications to the existing worship facility. The modular building is primarily a wood-sided structure. We're going to paint it to match colors. The existing worship facility is masonry.
Yeah, she'd mentioned it was going to fit in. I didn't know if that meant same treatment or if it's just painting.
No, we're so it'll be color match. We'll be adding on the deck and that entry canopy over the entry into the modular building. We'll pick up some detailing materials there. when we construct the pillars and that canopy that will match the existing building specifically.
Anything else, Ken?
Well, just maybe a clarification. Lisa had talked about that drainage that hadn't been defined before, and it will be in the future. I guess, have we looked at that, Bill, as far as handling the water runoff from this facility? Has that been considered properly?
Well, yes, because they're proposing detention facilities, which they currently don't have. The easement question is, there's a ditch there between their property and Mr. Carter's property that does require maintenance periodically, and it's just not more memorialized by an easement. So
But it will
that's all we're doing.
Great, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Morgan. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, thank you. I do want to make a statement. Lisa has been great to work with. She is fantastic.
Love to hear that. Thank you very much. How much did you pay him, Lisa? Anyone in the audience have any questions, any comments? Okay, if not, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move forward. Questions, anything? If not, we'll call for a vote.
Need a motion.
Need a motion, I'm sorry.
I move to approve ordinance number 1225, entitled an ordinance granting a conditional use permit for the existing 2020 square foot church to continue use as a place of worship and the addition of a 1440 square foot religious youth accessory building, also for use as a place of worship and youth activities, with associated site improvements and located at 201 North Boundary Street, Woodland Park, Colorado.
Subject to the recommendations of Planning Commission.
Subject to the recommendations.
And the findings.
And what?
In the findings.
Or just recommendations.
Yes.
Yep.
Second?
Levy,
Yes.
Matthews,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Rivetto,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving forward. Mr. Buttery, should we move forward to 9D?
Mr. Mayor, let me just give a quick brief on what we're going to do tonight as it relates to the budget. The last couple of meetings, we've had some really big issues to talk about, and so we've postponed some of the discussions as it relates to the budget. Tonight, we're going to ask you to do a multitude of things as it relates to the budget, but we'll walk you through each one of those. We're going to finish the discussion, the budget presentation, if you will. We still have the DDA operational fund, the DDA debt service fund, the water fund, and the wastewater fund to review with you as much detail as you want to go through. The other thing that we're going to do is talk about the assessment or the assignment of the mill levy that will be applied for the 2014 taxes. It's been the same since 1991, but that's an action that you have to approve every single year. We're also going to do a supplemental appropriation for the existing 2014 budget. Remember, that's what we do to align the real spending as it relates to the budget that you approve. And so that's done every year to bring everything in balance. And then lastly, we'll be taking a step to adopt the 2015 budget, but you do that by appropriating funds. You don't actually adopt the budget. You allow us to appropriate the funds to spend that is part of the budget. Then we have a couple of other housekeeping issues that we need to do with you as it relates to the bonds for the Aquatic Center, and we'll bring those up at the very end of the meeting. So with that as a bit of an intro, what I would like to do, Mr. Mayor, is move back to item 7A and finish up the discussion of the proposed budget, and then we'll just work through the agenda in the order that they're presented here.
That sounds good. Council, do you think we need a 5-minute break before we go into this, or should we just proceed?
Wouldn't hurt.
Let's do that. We'll start. We'll adjourn until 8:35. Okay.
I want to go to 10 o'clock.
That's good.
Okay.
So it's been done before. and
Great.
It seems like there's no cost.
Not immediately, if he needs to come up. So you can.
Yes.
Just use the microphone. Why don't you just stay right where you are? Okay. Good, thank you.
Okay, we will reconvene. And I'll hand it over to Mr. Buttery.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's get started with our budget discussion, because our goal tonight is that when we leave our chambers tonight, we will have you adopt this budget so that we can then indeed not have our December 18th council meeting. We've checked all the schedules. There's no projects or priorities associated with having the meeting, but it is available for us if we're not able to get through the budget discussion tonight. We are going to talk about DDA and the enterprise funds, but all the department heads are here and they're ready to answer any other questions that you might have as it relates to any of their funds. So with that, Mr. Mayor, why don't we go straight to the DDA summary sheet, which is behind the budget message. And it could be either page T as in Tom or U as in uniform. We had some changes in nomenclature partway through this, but it is the Downtown Development Authority 215 budget summary. And what I'd like to see is and Brian, of course, is prepared to answer any questions, but we'll only answer questions if you have them. So do you have any questions on the budget summary for the DDA fund?
I guess my only question is, and forgive me for not catching on earlier, will this reflect the city's purchase of the property in Woodland Station for the Aquatic Center? Where is that reflected, or is it not?
It is not.
Okay.
That expense is incorporated in the city's expenditures, but it is not incorporated as a revenue for the DDA, primarily because, as we've discussed, they would take that money from the city and then purchase the land that is owned by Vectra Bank. So it would be a pass-through, and I just didn't show that as an expense or as a revenue.
What about the forgiveness of a portion of their debt to the city?
And that happens much further into the future. None of that occurs in 2015.
Okay.
When actually does that happen?
Well, there's a piece of it that by the agreement they have with you that would occur in 2016, $36,000. And then as built into the debt service structure for our capital projects, there are associated annual payments from them that total the residual of that million. And it's stair-stepped in 2017. And I don't have that spreadsheet in front of me, but it's about $60,000, and then 2017 it's about $100,000. It peaks at 150, and then it tapers back down until their debt service is met.
But those numbers do not add to $1 million.
No, they don't, because there's the forgiveness. If you add the numbers that I used in the future for debt service plus the forgiveness of debt for the land transfer and the $100,000, that all of that does total the full debt that they owe the city.
Okay, although those numbers total something like 600 and...
I think it was 641.
I was going to say 630, yeah. Okay.
Correct. The assessed valuation, no, that's an incorrect statement. The assessors appraised, gotta love attorneys.
Yeah.
The appraised value of the land was, I believe, $469,000.
Yeah.
$375 a square foot. That's what totaled the $469,000. We would pay $100,000 in cash so that then purchases of Vectra property could occur. That $369,000 then would be forgiven from the $100 million or the $1 million debt, not forgiven, just in transfer of that, and then the residual $641,000 would be paid off over about a 6-year period.
Yeah.
But that hasn't been agreed upon yet.
No, it has not.
Yep.
So that's
That
still up for negotiation.
That's absolutely right.
Yep.
That's my general thinking, and that's what I put into the budget process.
Because they lose revenue if you do that, obviously.
Absolutely.
That's
And
putting it in
we know that going into
calculation.
it. Absolutely. There's no question. What other questions do you have on the DDA summary sheet? Yes, sir.
I mean, we usually go into, like on grants, there's a lot of stuff that flows through, but we keep a record of it having gone through. So I think it would probably be appropriate for us to, in fact, amend this to show that the revenues are 100,000, the expenses are 100,000. Add that 100,000 to both sides.
It's not a problem.
So we
do
can
that.
show the the audit trail, so to speak.
And we would absolutely incorporate that into the audit once we've accomplished that negotiation with the DDA. I wanted to show you from the city's perspective that we wanted to budget that expense. We can absolutely include that. That's not a problem. Other questions on the summary? Then let's jump to the details after the 215 DDA fund towards the back of the book. And again, this is the detail associated with the revenues. And remember, the DDA is funded primarily with TIF, and the TIF has increased over last year. We knew that was going to happen because of the new businesses that are online, and their buildings are now part of the revenue stream. But that is offset by the expenses in the reimbursement agreements. So what questions do you have about the details associated with the DDA's revenues and expenses? Wonderful. Then let's move on to the enterprise funds. Of course, Kip is here and can answer any detailed questions that you have, but we'll follow our normal pro forma and just walk through the summary. So let's jump to the 510 summary, which I believe is on page AA. As you're turning to that page, let me remind you that as you look at that page, if you look at the bottom line first, you see a number that's in brackets, and of course in budget terms that means it's a negative number. So many years ago it was asked of us for the enterprise funds to show the annual delta between revenues and expenses, and that's what that number reflects. So in 2015, that we will spend more money than what we will generate in the 510 fund. But what allows us to keep operating is the reserve that's been built up. And so by law, we're still fine. We use the reserves to cover the lack of revenue to meet the expense obligations that we have. So I don't want you to panic. That's not our fund balance. That's just the difference in a single year. So what questions do you have on the summary sheet?
You replenish that reserve fund during the year, though, don't you?
Say that again, please.
You replenish that reserve fund during the year.
Well, usually, yes. I mean, that's the idea, is that the fund then would regenerate itself.
We'll never get to a position where we're going to have expenses exceed revenue without having something to cover that.
That's certainly the hope. That's how we try to manage it, yes.
Well, that's why we got you, right?
No questions.
Okay, then let's, if there's no questions on the summary sheet, let's flip to the back of the 510 Water Enterprise Fund tab. And we've got all the detail associated with the operational side of that, both revenues and expenses. And of course, Kip's available to answer any detailed questions that you have on water operations or capital or water rights, administration. Yes, sir?
Well, to a large extent, we depend on the members of council who are also on the Water Advisory Board to have screened this very thoroughly. But so has that board?
No, the Utilities Advisory Council is not a clearinghouse for the budget.
Oh,
yeah. No, they don't have that responsibility. It's different than the DDA board. The DDA board has looked at their budget and has recommended that you approve this budget as we proposed it to you. But that's not, the Utility Advisory Committee doesn't review the budget. They are absolutely are key in determining capital projects, but not the budget.
But in determining if there's funds sufficient to pay for those capital projects, they probably still have to take a look at the revenue streams and as they open up and that sort of thing.
Probably not to the detail that you think they do. They generally just get a report from the utilities director that says he's incorporated that into the budget.
Okay. But as far as I'm a user of our city water services and sewer services, that the current rates that everyone is charged in Woodland Park for those services with the offset for inflation every year, are we going to have any increases beyond that normal for the foreseeable future?
If you recall, in March, April timeframe, we bring to you the water tap management reconciliation, and at that time, it spells out all of that information, and rates do increase every year annually in April based on 75% of the consumer price index. But other than that, we don't raise rates until we have to.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Okay, until you have to, but have you projected forward to a place in the future where you may have a capital investment project that would you require you to have to?
Part of that reconciliation that we bring to you, it's presented in there. In 2017, we actually have a rate reduction in there and no rate increase.
Well, thank you. I'll pay attention next April.
Unless there's something crazy that happens and we have to recover, that'd be no other reason.
Yes, sir.
I am a member of the Utilities Advisory Committee, and we do from time to time ask financial questions, wastewater plant expansion and timelines for those kinds of things, and and we do get the correct answers from Kip. Bob?
Thank you.
Okay.
And that was one of my questions on the wastewater capital. I think it's account number 5147. Headworks heater, we budgeted $10,000 in 2014 and did not expend that, but are we carrying that over because we didn't need to do that replacement this year?
Right.
Okay.
You've moved quite a ways ahead already.
And Kip's pretty good at postponing projects as long as he can. Yeah.
What other questions do you have about water or wastewater? Okay. Do you have questions about the any other funds before we move along with the other components of the budget process? Wonderful. Then, Wally, if you could please take over with 7B, the resolution for the property taxes.
Good evening, Mayor Levy, members of council. Resolution 783, levying the general property taxes for the year 2014 to help defray the cost of the 2015 budget is presented tonight. The mill levy is 16.249 mills, and that has remained unchanged since 1991. Are there any additional questions that I can answer for you?
You know, I've got one, Wally, and I don't quite understand. I know there was some time that there was a mill levy increase, but I guess that you call it something different. Where didn't we have something for schools that was approved to increase the mill levy?
Well, yeah, but this is for the city, and the city only. So the fire district had a mill levy increase. The school districts had 2. The library districts had 1 to build their facility. But no, the city's is absolutely separate from theirs.
It has been since 1991, did you say?
Yes,
that
that's correct, since
Right.
1991.
And prior to 1991, the property tax, there was a transition in the late 80s and early 90s from the city being dependent upon property tax for revenue and becoming more reliant on sales tax for revenue. As you know, about 45% of our revenue comes from sales tax, and 20% or so from property tax. That transition occurred in the late 80s, early 90s. So up until 1991, the mill levy changed dramatically in order to facilitate sufficient revenue to run the city. But since 1991, it hasn't had to be changed because we rely more on sales tax and the stability of sales tax to help us run the city.
And the question I have, the criteria you use to decrease the mill levy would be what? I mean, if we are getting more revenue from sales tax, maybe our taxpayers can be relieved a little bit by lowering the mill levy. I know that's not what government likes to hear, but
No, but it's a reasonable question, and it is things that we look at. Kip mentioned to you that in 2017, there's a programmed reduction in water fees. That's because of the good management of that program. When the council makes decisions to build an aquatic center or a memorial park upgrade and a fleet maintenance facility, it's really a difficult thing to talk about reducing that revenue stream so that we can then continue to provide the services that the city
well, my
wants.
only point is if the sales tax revenue stream keeps increasing, like normally it will, I'm just wondering if that could compensate for perhaps.
It possibly could. City council has the ability to reduce taxes. In order to increase them again, it has to go before a vote of the people.
Can we give rebates in a particular year?
I don't know the answer to that question. I suspect Tabor says you can for some instances, but we're debruised, so we don't have to follow that, which again allows us to do the kinds of projects that you want us to do for the good of the community. But I would suggest to you that because of your commitment to these capital projects, I don't see that rebates would be possible.
Not in the near future.
No.
20 years.
Maybe 5.
That's a great number.
So we adopt the mill levy by resolution because it's simpler than to change it in the future if you so choose to do that. It's not an ordinance, it's a resolution.
So we need a motion.
Yes, please.
Hear a
Move to
motion to
approve the 783.
Second.
Suzanne?
Matthews?
Say
Sorry, we're
yes.
taking-
Say yes.
I'm sorry. I was being interrupted there.
This is a vote to
Sorry about
approve
that.
Resolution 783.
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Brevetto?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Harvey?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
1 second.
Levy?
Thank you.
Now. So the next item on the budget agenda is to do what we refer to as the supplemental appropriation. This is what effectively brings into balance this existing year, 2014. It has very little to do with the 2015 budget. It's just that the timing occurs simultaneously. So it's a supplemental appropriation as opposed to the initial appropriation that you did a year ago to approve the 2014 budget. So with that, Wally, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spuddery. I'm now presenting ordinance number 1224, which is an ordinance adjusting the expenditure appropriations to various funds for the city of Woodland Park for the 2014 budget year, and it's amending ordinance number 1199 for 2013. Are there any questions I can answer for you?
Yeah, I brought this up the first time we covered the general fund, and when we talked in the context of ordinances being kind of updated. And my concern was that we're being asked after the fact for a lot of these things, when our section 9.12 of the charter requires us to do it before we actually accrue those charges. So I'm going to approve this now. It's just that when we talk about some of the other things that we need in a charter change, that we need to perhaps discuss this.
Certainly, and that's something that council can decide to do if that's what you choose to do. As I'm looking at the list, other than perhaps Well, not even pro-challenge. The amount for pro-challenge certainly changed. I proposed a $65,000 budget, and that did increase.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everything
And
else you were
Yeah, I
aware
looked
of.
at previous things, and if you're just a few dollars over this way or that way, it's not a big deal. It's just when you get a big thing, and it's something we could have known in advance, and you could have asked us for those big increases, that's the type of thing we need to consider when we consider changes to the charter.
And what is this big thing?
This
What
was
is it?
pro-challenge.
That meets the threshold.
Well, that's something we need to discuss, is what is
That's
the
right.
threshold?
That's right.
I mean, you could say the city manager has authority to move money between any accounts within the total of the budget, and rather than just by department, without coming back to council, for instance. That would be one solution. But you may need more money than the total budget too. So we've got to talk about those. Tonight's not the time to do it. Okay.
Any other questions for Wally? Okay, if not, we need a motion to approve ordinance 1224.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Suzanne?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Bravetto,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Levy,
Thank you, yes.
Matthews.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Wally, go ahead with 9E, please.
Okay, the final item I have to present tonight is ordinance 1226, and that is the ordinance appropriating sums of money to the various funds relating to the 2015 budget year. Summary details are included in your packet. Are there any additional questions that I can answer for you?
Nothing else? If not, we need a motion to approve.
Move to approve ordinance 1226.
Second.
Suzanne?
Bravetto,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Matthews,
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Council, I would at this time like to thank the staff. They work very, very hard, as they do every year on the budget, to review things to make sure that our tax-paying citizens get the best bang for their buck. You made some tough decisions this year to move forward with some capital projects. We have to watch those now very, very closely, and I'm very confident that this group that you see in front of you will be extremely cautious in how they spend taxpayer dollars so that we can maintain that level of trust. So my thanks to each and every one of you for the things that you did to help make this budget go so smoothly.
Thank you. And in that regard, I had quite a few questions, and I was able to deal with it offline with Wally, and he was able to help me out a lot. So one of these days, I'll become an accountant.
It was my pleasure to do so, sir.
Well, and thanks too to the council for their questions and their hard work, because for me, it was my first time, and obviously didn't know the ins and outs as well as some, but thank you, council, and I think we've got a great budget for 2015. Okay, we'll move on to new business. David, 10A.
And I may get Aaron's assistance with this if I stumble too much, but the intent of Resolution 785 is it's connected with the financing and bonding and COPs for our projects, that if we incur a cost now, that we can use those borrowed monies later to reimburse ourselves for the expenses associated with that. Let me give you an example. We may need to do some surveying of the location of the aquatic project prior to receiving proceeds from the bonds. And if that cost was $10,000, we would use the city's funding to pay for that. But this resolution then allows us to use that borrowed money to reimburse ourselves, so it becomes part of the debt structure. And our bond attorney and our city attorney has suggested that we do that. And it's a good idea because it helps us keep our general fund operating expenses whole, and it keeps monies going to the project that you want it to go to.
And without the resolution, we would not be able to do that?
Correct.
It's an IRS tool. The IRS allows, if you do this reimbursement resolution, you have that look-back period.
Okay.
That's how the bond attorneys have interpreted the IRS rule, and it's a pro forma, fairly standard procedure that bond attorneys recommend that you do adopt one of these, so you have that ability.
Question, Bob?
Thank you. Yeah, like geotechnical, soil
Exactly.
borings,
Yeah.
maybe the initial part of the schematic design, things like that. too.
Absolutely.
So-
Those are another example of that type of use.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any limits on how far you can look back?
It's
Okay.
60 days.
60 days only?
From the passage of the resolution?
Yeah, okay.
So if we didn't do this, we'd, in effect, delay things a fair amount.
Possibly.
Potentially.
Yeah, I mean, if we do some surveying, we could actually do that today before snow falls. But we probably won't, but that's an example. So if we needed to, we could come back for an extension or another resolution, but we'll have to see how that goes as things move along.
Okay.
Any other questions? Call for a motion.
We'll move to approve Resolution 785.
Second?
Suzanne?
Carlson?
Yes.
Harvey?
Yes.
Levy?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Brivetto?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
And the last item on new business tonight also has to do with bonding and also the ability to procure the certificates of participation. Our bond counsel has encouraged us to codify the general fund balance desires of the city council. Recall that prior to last year, the council said we just need to have something above 10%, and we have been content with that. Based on the desire to have these multiple capital projects, we realized that we needed to spend down some of that reserve and only maintain a 10%. I shouldn't say only, because a 10% reserve is sufficient. But for us to have a better standing in the eye of the bond issuers, we need to have a policy in place that says we will maintain a 10% general fund reserve, and that way it helps them feel that the city is solvent and able to take care of itself in a time of turmoil, and it makes our debt payments more assured. So that's why we bring you this resolution tonight, so that as we move forward with the borrowing of money, we're in a better strength position to do so.
Aaron, does this take into account a catastrophic event that might cause us to use that 10%?
It does, and this is just a resolution. You can alter this should you need to do that.
Yeah, it doesn't prevent you from spending the money. It just says here's this is our what we want to do.
It's your policy.
Correct.
I move to approve resolution number 786.
Second.
Suzanne?
Harvey?
Yes.
Levy?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Brivetto?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, staff, Wally, everybody. Gosh, I'm guessing that nobody thought we'd finish that in 30 minutes. So, thank you very much, council. We will move on. Public comment items not on the agenda. I don't have anybody else signed up. Is there anyone else here? Mrs. Miller, this is when you like to say something, do you? Not this evening. Okay. Then we'll move on to reports, and I get to start with mayor's reports. And just chatted with Bill about this a minute ago. The city always looks fabulous, as you all know. Christmas time, even for us Jewish guys, is a time to celebrate, really, and be with our families and friends and just really celebrate. And our city could not look any better right now. Not only the lights that the businesses have put up already, but certainly everything that's done under Bill and David's auspices. It's just wonderful, and so we want to thank you for that. It's a pleasure driving through town, driving home tonight. I'm sure everybody will look around and say, "Oh my gosh, we got a pretty nice looking city right now. So as we always do. But to all of you, thank you very much. Saturday, December 6th, I know there's a lot going on. We'll start with the Kiwanis Breakfast with Santa, which will be fun. UPass Cultural Center, 8 to 11 o'clock, and that is a free event. December 6th, also, Lighter Side of Christmas Parade, 6 o'clock, and the Christmas tree lighting in the Cultural Center will follow. Hope to see all of you there. That'll be fun. Lots of
and
kids.
Mr. Mayor, why don't you tell us what your part in the parade will be this year? Because the theme is, what's the theme?
Here comes the snow.
It's a Beatles. Here comes the snow, and so we're going to have snow plows in the parade, according to Mr. Alsbach, ranging from Mongo trucks, large, medium, small, super small, to, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, what's your role again?
From what I understand, a very small snow shovel. And I will be behind everybody. So look for me. The good news is going to be 40 degrees, I think. So
that's good.
Thank God for that. That's going to be fun, though. That'll really be fun. Sunday,
fireworks after that, too.
That's
do we have
correct.
fireworks that night also?
We do. Council approved the budget that included the fireworks. They were a hit. I do want to warn the community that it's not going to be, the show's not as lengthy as last year because we had combined 4 years worth of fireworks into one display, but it'll still be phenomenal. It'll be a wonderful show.
Yeah, great weekend coming up. Sunday, December 7th, the Wind Symphony Christmas Concert, UPass Cultural Center. It begins at 7 o'clock. Let's see. Okay, next Saturday, December 13th, the Winter Farmers Market, the UPass Cultural Center from 9 to 1. Tuesday, January 13th. I guess this is assuming that our next meeting is now going to be the 14th. Is that correct now?
It would be the 15th,
15th
of
excuse
January.
Me. 15th of January.
So we're not meeting on the 8th?
We'll talk about that in just 1 second.
January 13th, the Chamber Business Roundtable at the UPass Cultural Center. I would recommend or encourage people to attend. It's a great roundtable and exchange of ideas that the Chamber does 2 or 3 times a year, Deb? 3 times a year. And it's always a good exchange of ideas for sure. And gosh, that's all I've got. Merry Christmas. I know we're going to see everybody, but happy holidays, happy New Year to everybody watching. And what did I forget, Deb?
Holiday home tour.
Holiday home tour. Of course, that is this weekend, Saturday, December 6th and 7th. And there's a lot of action in town. But yeah, holiday home tour. You can buy tickets at Tweeds and any number of places. Is that correct? That building.
It's like charades. The old library. Yes.
The old library.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that's a great event, too. So we'll look forward to seeing everybody there. Okay. That's it for me. Council reports. Ken.
Well, I have the pleasure of bringing up someone who's at every one of our meetings, sitting in the back row, since I'm the council representative on Keep Woodland Park Beautiful. I have the pleasure of having Renee Bunting come up as our chairperson for that committee and share a few things with us. We have a lot going on, especially this time of year. And as unaccustomed as she is to talking, she will give us a rundown on what's going on. And next time, I'll be able to do that.
I will write you the notes. So good evening, Mr. Mayor, council staff. As Councilman Matthews told you, we have been very busy with our website, Facebook, Bearware program, our new recycle bins, all 18 of them. And now we have young ambassadors, 3 kids from the schools, Abby, Max, and Summer, who've been very busy. One of the big projects that the high school has going, which you're going to be hearing a lot about from Councilman Matthews, it's called Go Green Project, and they're going to build a
greenhouse
out back with the help of a lot of people chipping in because they didn't know how they would fund it or anything. So we're really excited and we're going to work with them. Abby and Summer have been really busy with the green team and cleaning up from Kelly's Road down to Rampart Range Road, and that's just a never end. Every week they're having to clean it up because it's really just very dirty. We're getting ready to get our plaques for our boulders for our adopted gardens. Spence Swan is doing those down in Colorado Springs, and they're about $700 a piece, so we can only do 3 this year. So we need 4. And Farmers Market, we've been having Keep Woodland Park Beautiful, has a booth there every Farmers Market, so we're really excited about that. Cemetery cleanup, we have a lot going on with that. We'll be meeting with the city manager to go over some code enforcement with the cemetery and getting that cleaned up. And I think, we collected food on National Recycle Day, November 15th, in front of City Market with Karen Casey Savage and some kids from the Teen Center. So that was a lot of fun. And I think that is just about all.
How much
Anything
how much food did we collect, do you know?
Oh my gosh, it was over 15 shopping carts full. And we actually didn't do it the whole time. We did from 10 to 2. And it was so cold that day, and the kids came with no coats, shorts, flip-flops. Yeah, it was just great. But over 15 carts of food, and it was just really awesome. The kids really enjoyed. I was really surprised. I thought they complained the whole time, but they didn't. So it was a lot of fun. So thank you.
Thank you, Renee.
You bet.
Go ahead, John.
Yep. I'd like to comment on the process by which we appointed the planning commissioners this evening. I don't recall that we've done that in the past. I may have had a senior moment, or perhaps I wasn't here, but I thought Ken's suggestion that we interview one at a time, I thought these were the most comprehensive interviews I've seen trying to fill a planning commission vacancy, and I thought it was a positive step. So I think we ought to congratulate ourselves on that. And if we have been doing it all along,
we have.
Never mind.
I think another thing is that there's no competition. There's 2 slots and 2 vacancies and 2 applicants. There's no need to really grill anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it has been.
situational.
It has been.
It has been.
Thank
the
you for
rule and the
really
exception.
reminding me.
But,
I was having such a good night.
But
It happens to all of us.
Well, since we had 2 marathon council meetings in the last month, I failed to provide a report from the Historic Preservation Committee. We had a great presentation for the committee about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, with a potential project for a mural on the side of the Ute on the Ute Cultural Center. And I don't recall the artist's name, but it was absolutely gorgeous mural that depicted the early history of the town. I don't know how we're going to go forward with that project unless Sally wants to comment on that. But what the Historic Preservation Committee would like of the council is a resolution that would endorse this particular project, and that'll come to us in the new year. Sally, do you have anything to add to that? Or David?
Well, it was Lois Sprague is the artist,
Lois.
and it's a historical depiction from Ute Indians all the way through, I think, 1956 or 57. It's
done the work.
very interesting, and it's significantly better than I imagined when
Really?
when they brought it up. And what we'll do is we'll bring the initial rendering to the council as part of that process for the resolution, so that you're comfortable with what you're going to support.
Thanks.
Well, Creative Arts District actually spearheaded that kind of project.
Correct.
And their plan is to, as they approached the Historical Preservation Committee first, to have them review, because it started with the Historical Preservation Committee, the idea of murals, and then pass that on to the Creative Arts District, who are the experts in art, if you will. The next phase is probably they're gonna brief the Main Street program folks, so that they have an idea of what we're thinking about, because this is also part of the Main Street effort, and as you'll see here in the future. And then they'll probably present it to council so that you guys see it too.
One of the things I was impressed with, not to belabor the point, is that the artist has included history of the Utes here in the area, and the model for the depiction of a Native American is a living ancestor of I guess Chief Uray.
Correct.
Yeah.
Great grandson, I think, something like that.
Yeah, she's a lot of attention to detail. Wherever she decides to use this depiction, it's a really nice project.
Anything else, Council? Just one more thing. Renee, you do an outstanding job. The presence of Teller County Sheriff's Department in our community has, in my opinion, never been greater. I'm at a lot of events, and you're always there, so I got to imagine you're at a lot of events in addition to that. But thanks to you and Sheriff Ensminger and your whole staff. You guys do a great job. I think everybody would agree with that.
Absolutely.
Always with a smile on your face. So thank you very much for what you give to our community. Okay, Aaron?
I have nothing, Your Honor.
Nothing. Then Mr. Buttery.
We'll ask Brian to give us a update on DDA and economic development. Then I've got a couple of things.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just to kind of follow through some of the work program elements as we finalize the 2014. As you know, I'm involved with the Waterline Loop project with the hospital, and a lot of really good interaction with City, Kip Wiley, Bill Osbach, Larry Bozeman with Karis Bible College. As you know, we're boring under 24 as we loop the hospital, come under 24 into the campus of Karis Bible College. And even though it sounds like a simple project, there's a lot of details always. And what's important about the economic development side of it is what it will generate in the future, not only with the relationships we have with the hospital and the Bible College, but for the skilled nursing facility, which could project upwards to 100 reasonably, I always say the $15 an hour plus jobs that are important in our community. So that's an ongoing project going well, working with JPS Engineering. Many of us work with John Schwab. And again, a good overall project. Main Street, the board has gone through an orientation with DOLA, Stephanie Trowler. We're going to go through a work program. Several of us here this evening will be involved next Monday. We're holding the session over at Sturman, 10 to 2, basically to go through work program priorities for 2015 under the 4 key pillars of Main Street: organization, promotion, historic preservation, design, and economic restructuring. Having said that, it all dovetails into some of the key elements. It won't be long, and we'll be looking at a DDA retreat, and we're thinking about some concepts to bring in, obviously, the DDA, Main Street, Creative Arts District, and also the Woodland Park City Council. I'm going to have some conversations with David about how we do a more interactive process for the retreat, probably sometime in January. But one of the things that I want to bring up, I assume everybody gets a copy of the sales tax report that we just got. When you look at what's going on, David had mentioned it earlier about how that transition from property tax to sales tax in terms of a primary revenue source for the city. We've had a good year, about 5 to 8% year over year. The last report, 5.41%. What's important about this data is we know that I call them our major inline national tenants, the Walmarts, the Safeways, the City Markets, the convenience stores, et cetera, O'Reilly's, Family Dollar, they're doing well. I had a recent conversation with the manager of Tractor Supply. They've more than exceeded their projections coming out of the gate, and they're looking at a very strong fourth quarter for Woodland Park, better than their overall metrics that they were looking at their Castle Rock store in terms of what they expected out of the store. So that's a good barometer of where we are from a spending standpoint, but it doesn't tell the whole story, because we know that there are the quote mom and pop businesses, the smaller specialty retail, restaurants, we all know, come and go at times. We just had a ribbon cutting today with a local business, and we always are optimistically guarded about the smaller businesses. You're going to see a lot of emphasis with that, not only with the DDA, Main Street, Creative Arts, Chamber. We have a lot of interaction with the Chamber, and we want to bring that message via our office and others relative to that important mission in 2015. So you'll be hearing more about that as we move forward. But again, we think the story's good. We need to be able to show that there's success for all levels of business within the community. Woodland Station, we're ongoing. I just met with another banking interest today with the Corzecos and the bowling facility. They basically have to choose a lender. They've got lenders going to them. We're hoping it's a hometown lender, and the story's good there. We're obviously spent a lot of time with the Aquatic Center working on the metrics of location and cost, and there's an ongoing discussion as we move through that process. One of the things that we were able to get out last week was the DOLA Energy Mineral Impact Assistance Grant, $875,000 for fleet maintenance. The city engineer and city manager worked with our office to get that grant out, and we're hoping, we did get a first review from Clay Brown, some of you know Clay from DOLA, and critiqued, and we were able to get that into a final application and get that out before the December 1st deadline. So
when will you hear back on that, Brian?
The deadline date, I believe, the finalization is March, I believe, for 2015. There's several iterations. When you're in the Tier 2 category, Clay is our advocate. They make the presentation. We provide the materials. He's got to go to the board, that DOLA board, and then we should hear back hopefully in March of next year.
Excuse me, Brian, assuming we get that reduces the amount of the COP. Is that correct, David? Or no? How does that work?
Some of it. It has a ripple effect through all three of the capital projects. It would be general fund types of money, and general fund is what we would be using to replenish or pay off the COPs. So it would reduce the amount for that project, but it would also have a positive implication on the others as well.
David has mentioned if we get it, there's a steak and lobster dinner somewhere down by the Swiss. So we're
brought by who?
We're keeping our. Obviously, it's an important grant. And then finally, I just want to mention we finalized our legal documents for our nonprofit housing organization. As you recall, council may recall that we received a grant from the Pikes Peak Association of Realtors, and our own John Schaefer. I've been working with John diligently through this process. You've heard some comment today with the planning commissioners on the importance of affordable housing. Obviously, Trail Ridge is a huge project for us, but it doesn't hit all the metrics that we see in our community. We're looking at an effective work program. We're working with CHAFA, Colorado Division of Housing, Upper Arkansas Council of Government Housing Division. There's a number of nonprofit and faith-based organizations in our community that are forming a mission for affordable housing. So with this nonprofit, we'll be able to collaborate with these individual groups moving forward in a range of housing product, not only multifamily but single-family ownership as well, under the affordable workforce umbrella. So we're excited about making that part of our mission as we move forward. I've always felt strongly from the economic development standpoint, if we're going to have effective economic development, we have to have the full range of housing, and this is a direction that we move forward in. So with that, any questions or comments from council at this point?
When will Arby's open?
Sally?
Good question.
A little bit more about that.
I don't have a specific date, but they're working hard.
I know. My wife's an Arby's fan.
Arby's and Starbucks. We
Starbucks.
We get questions on both of those. So, thank you, council.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
One of the items that I left off of your list of activities, Mayor, the business after hours is Tuesday, December 16th at Tweeds, and it's always a beautiful place to be at Christmas time is in Tweeds. Council, because we did finish the budget, as I mentioned earlier, we have no need to meet at council on December 18th. January 1st is the Thursday. It's a national holiday, and so we typically do not meet on those types of days. So we have checked our schedule and the timeline and things that are in the pipeline, and we'll be fine to cancel both the December 18th and the January 1st council meetings and reconvene on January 15th if it's your desire to do so. from a staff perspective, we would support that.
Let's check with John on that.
Yeah, very definitely.
And if there's a need, if something comes up as we move through the process, if we need to call a meeting, a special meeting, we'll post it and get everybody in for that.
You need a vote on that or just a nodding of the head?
No, it's always best to record that in case we're challenged at some point in the future. And you can do them combined if you like.
Well, then I move to officially cancel the 18th of December's meeting as well as the 1st of January 2015.
Suzanne?
Levy?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Bravetto?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Harvey?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
And that's all from the staff this evening, Mayor.
Great. Thank you, staff.
That's a Christmas present.
Thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing you on many occasions prior to the 15th of January. This meeting.
So will we see you?
It's pleasant to get out of here by 9:30.
Yeah, what a change. We got all this time. What do we got?